I was balancing a grocery bag on one hip and a set of keys in my mouth when I saw the moving truck. It was parked half on the curb, back open. A man in a neon vest hauling out what looked unmistakably like our living room ottoman. I froze, blinked twice. Maybe Mom had finally decided to donate some of the old furniture, something she talked about endlessly, but never acted on. But then I saw two unfamiliar women standing on our front porch, clipboard in hand, one pointing toward the upstairs windows. They weren't movers. I dropped the groceries on the porch. A tomato rolled off the step and split against the concrete. "Excuse me," I asked, stepping forward. The clipboard lady turned. "Oh, you must be the daughter. We just love the bay window, your old room, right?" I stood there, frozen. What are you talking about?" She smiled, apologetic but still upbeat. "We're the new owners. Closing was finalized yesterday. Your mother said you were already moved out?" I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Inside, I heard the echo of laughter. Mom's laugh. That high, amused one she used when she'd already decided you were overreacting. I pushed past them and entered the house. Everything was half-packed. Mom was in the kitchen wrapping a set of crystal glasses, humming along to Fleetwood Mac. She looked up and blinked like I'd interrupted her during yoga class. "You're home early," she said, not unkindly. I could barely get the words out. "You sold the house?" She paused, then turned back to the box. "It was time." "You didn't even tell me." "I mentioned it," she said calmly, placing a glass down with a soft clink. "At dinner. You weren't paying attention. I live here, Mom. You crash here. You work full-time across town, you're barely ever home, and I didn't think you'd want the responsibility. I'm moving in with Gerald. You'll land on your feet. You always do." I stared at her. "You just decided?" Her hands didn't stop. "It's not a big deal, honey. You're 30. You're not a child anymore." That last part was what broke me. Not the house, not the lies. That dismissive flick of her tone, like my whole existence could be folded and packed away as easily as the linen napkins. I walked out of the kitchen without another word, heading upstairs. My bedroom was already half cleared. My books gone, my nightstand drawers emptied. On my pillow sat a single manila envelope. Inside, a cashier's check for $5,000 and a yellow post-it, "Just until you get your own place. Love you always." It wasn't the money that gutted me, it was the assumption that I would be fine, that I didn't deserve to be consulted, that this space, my space, was never really mine. That night I slept in my car, not because I had nowhere to go, but because I couldn't go back in. Not after being erased in my own home. The next morning, I called my landlord. The same one I told maybe next month for the past 3 years. I signed the lease for the small studio I'd always thought I wasn't ready for. I signed it without calling her, without giving her the satisfaction of seeing me beg for a few more days under her roof. 3 weeks later, I watched from across the street as a new family moved in. A couple and their twin girls. One of the girls pointed to the mailbox. My name was still etched faintly on the rusted metal. I didn't cry. Not then. But something permanent shifted. Something old snapped off cleanly, like a branch finally giving way. And I didn't tell anyone. Not even my best friend. I buried it. Until I saw the listing for her house 3 years later. My name is Rachel Linden. I'm 34 years old. I own a boutique architecture firm in Chicago. I live alone in a converted loft that smells like cedar and clean ambition. Most people would call it stylish. I call it mine. But I wasn't always this version of myself. I was the invisible daughter. The one who blended in just enough to keep peace, but never enough to be chosen. Growing up, it was always Emily this, Emily that. Emily got the pink bedroom. I got the one with the water stain on the ceiling. Emily danced. I drew floor plans in the margins of my homework. Mom would say, "She just needs more attention, Rachel. You understand, don't you?" And for a long time, I did. I had to. Because understanding was the only way to stay close to a mother who rationed affection like dessert after dinner. I remember the summer Emily crashed Dad's Lexus into a stop sign. Mom was beside herself, for Emily's safety, of course. I offered to drive Emily to her classes for the rest of the month. Mom looked at me like I'd asked to borrow her jewelry. "She needs space," she said. But when I got accepted into a design camp the following summer, an opportunity at a real firm in New York, Mom said it was a lot of money for just some drawings. I didn't go. And that necklace? The one I gave her for Mother's Day when I was 16? The delicate silver locket I saved 2 months' pay for? She regifted it. To Emily. On her 21st birthday. "Rachel doesn't mind," she told the guests, laughing like it was a charming anecdote. Emily wore that locket for years. By the time I turned 28, Dad had already passed from pancreatic cancer. Emily was married, living in California, and barely called. But Mom still spoke of her like she was the moon, and I was just a shadow crossing it. "You should take notes from your sister," she'd say when I visited with frozen lasagna and unpaid design sketches. Eventually, I stopped offering anything. After she sold my childhood home without warning, I stopped visiting entirely. She called once, in early spring. "You haven't been over in ages," she said. "Gerald wants to meet you." "I'm busy." "Still working on those little house drawings?" That was what she called it, little house drawings, even when I was designing eco-smart kitchens for real estate investors across the state. I hung up mid-sentence. That same night, I took the post-it she'd left in the envelope, "Just until you get your own place," and stuck it on my fridge. It stayed there for years. Every time a client questioned my rates, or a loan officer looked skeptical at my business model, or a contractor tried to explain my own sketch back to me, I'd look at that post-it and quietly rage. Because she never believed I would build anything. Not a career, not a home, not a self. But I did. And then 3 years after she sold the house she never thought I'd miss, I saw her name on a foreclosure listing. Property of Joyce Linden. 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, quiet cul-de-sac. Asking $230,000. My fingers hovered over the mouse. It wasn't her main residence. It was her lake cottage, the one she bought with Gerald as a future family getaway. The one Emily used for her baby showers, the one I'd never been invited to, not once. The house was slipping through her fingers. She was behind on taxes. HOA fees stacked high. Gerald apparently had left months earlier. Something about Arizona and not signing up for this. It took me 2 days to decide. I didn't tell anyone. I called a real estate lawyer, wired the funds, and closed in a private name. The property transferred clean, quick, no fanfare. It was mine. Just like that. But the part that truly changed me came after the papers were signed. I went to the lake cottage. It was empty, dusty, stale with old lake air and broken promises. In the kitchen drawer, I found the silver locket, the same one Mom had given Emily, and Emily had apparently discarded. Inside the locket was a folded piece of paper, a grocery list of all things: milk, rice, Rachel's lasagna. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know what to feel. So I took the locket, I slipped it into my pocket, and I locked the door behind me. 3 weeks later, she called. She didn't know it was me who bought the house yet, but she was calling everyone, apparently. Friends, distant cousins, even an old church group. I heard through my uncle that she was devastated, said the house was an emotional safe place. A safe place I was never welcome in, but now it was mine. I didn't tell her for weeks, not because I wanted to hide it, but because I wanted to feel what it was like to own something she had once withheld from me. Ownership is a strange thing. Most people think it's about money, about power. But for me, buying that cottage wasn't about either. It was about permission. Permission to stop asking, to stop proving, to stop trying to be worthy of a key I never had a chance to earn. I left the house untouched for a while. No renovations, no renters, no updates to the drapes or the faded kitchen tile. I wanted it to sit still, mine. The call came one Friday afternoon. "Rachel?" I recognized the voice immediately, tired, slightly brittle around the edges, like she was trying to sound casual and failing. "Hi, Mom." There was a pause, the kind that sits heavy like wet fabric. I heard someone bought the lake house." I stayed quiet. "I was hoping it might have been you. Gerald said it sold quickly in cash, and I know you've been doing well." I could feel my throat tightening. It was me. Another pause. "Oh." Then, like she couldn't help herself. "Why didn't you tell me?" "You didn't tell me when you sold the house I lived in." Silence. "That wasn't the same," she said eventually, but the words rang hollow. "Wasn't it?" She didn't answer. Instead, she cleared her throat and shifted gears, as she always did when emotions didn't go her way. "Well, I was wondering if you might let me stay there. Just for a while, until I figure out my next steps. Things are tight. I'm living with a friend from church, but it's not ideal." I didn't say no. But I didn't say yes either. I told her I'd think about it. She thanked me. Hung up. Left me staring at the phone, at the framed sketches on my studio wall, at the locket I'd placed neatly on the windowsill where the light could find it. I didn't owe her this. And yet, I drove out that weekend. The house was still there, still waiting. Same creaky porch swing, same dried hydrangea bush near the driveway. Inside, I sat on the old tweed couch and looked around. Every memory I didn't get to have was in that room. The holidays they never invited me to. The parties she planned without asking if I was free. The family photos that always had a gap where I should have been standing. But now it was mine. I called a locksmith that afternoon. Changed the locks. That night, I made a decision. A quiet one. The kind that settles in your stomach like a stone in a river. Unmoving, undeniable. I emailed her. Simple. Direct. Subject. Re the lake house. "Hi, Mom. I thought about your request. You can stay there for 3 months, no rent, I'll even cover the utilities, but I'm not handing over a key. If you want to be there, I'll meet you. I'll open the door myself. You can come and go during the day, but at night, I lock up. And when 3 months are over, I take the key back, no negotiation. This isn't revenge. This is a boundary, one I should have drawn years ago. Rachel, she didn't respond right away. But a week later, she texted, okay, thank you. I'll be there Saturday at 10. She didn't say I love you. She didn't even sign her name. Saturday came. She arrived early. I was already parked in the driveway, watching her through the glass as she stepped out of her car. She looked smaller than I remembered. The woman who once filled every room with her opinion, her expectations, her rules, now shuffling toward me in a cardigan 2 sizes too big. She smiled awkwardly. Morning. I nodded and opened the door. She walked in slowly, taking it all in. Her hand brushed over the dining table. Her gaze flicked to the shelf above the sink, where a ceramic mug she once loved still sat. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she said, "It's cleaner than I left it. I haven't touched anything." She turned to look at me. Her expression was unreadable, something between confusion and regret. We stood there like that for a while, 2 women suspended in the space between estrangement and survival. She went to the guest room, set down her bag, made tea. I stayed outside. I didn't want her gratitude. I didn't want her apology. I just wanted her to live, for once, on terms not designed by her comfort and my compliance. For the next 3 months, she came and went. We barely spoke. She never asked for the key again. And I never offered. But every time she left for the night, I'd wait until the taillights disappeared, then walk inside and lock the door behind her. It wasn't about spite. It was about choice. This house, this peace, was something I had chosen for myself. And no one got to take it from me again. It happened on a Sunday, sometime in early October. One of those days when the air is cool enough to carry the scent of drying leaves but not yet cold enough to bite. I was in the yard again, pulling weeds from the base of the porch, my sleeves rolled up, sweat mixing with soil under my nails. I liked working on the house. It gave me something to shape, something to repair that didn't flinch or talk back. Her car pulled in around noon. I knew it was her before I even looked up. The engine idled too long before she turned the key off, like she was unsure whether to stay or go. And then the click of her car door, too soft, too slow. She had something in her hands, a round silver tin. She walked toward me like she was balancing something fragile, and I noticed for the first time how old she looked in daylight. Smaller than I remembered. Her hair was gray at the roots, her steps heavier. "I brought cookies," she said, holding them out like a peace offering. I didn't move to take them. "You want tea?" I asked, brushing the dirt from my palms. Her face brightened slightly, grateful for the neutral offer. "I'd love some." We sat in the kitchen. I poured the water. We didn't speak until we both had cups in our hands. The silence wasn't new. It had lived between us for years. But this one was heavier, like both of us knew we had reached a corner with no more polite ways to turn around. She placed the tin between us on the table, but made no move to open it. "I know I said I'd only be here 3 months, she began. I didn't respond. "I've respected that. I've stayed out of your way. I haven't asked for anything." She paused. "But I was hoping you'd consider leaving me a key, just for emergencies, or when you're not around." I looked at her. She rushed to explain. "I'm not asking to move in. It's exhausting having to text, to wait outside, to explain to people that I don't have access to a home I used to." She stopped herself. "I feel like a stranger," she finally said. "You are," I said calmly, her lips pressed together. "I'm not trying to punish you, Mom," I said. "But I'm not going to hand you access to something you never respected when you had it." She flinched. "Is this really about the key, or is this still about the old house?" I felt something flicker in my chest, sharp, hot. "It's about the principle. You made decisions that told me I didn't matter. You sold that house without a conversation. You moved your life forward without once looking over your shoulder to see who you were dragging behind. You made it very clear that I was convenient until I wasn't." Her hands curled around her teacup. "I didn't think you cared," she said quietly. "You never said anything." I didn't say anything, because it never made a difference. There it was, the root, dug up and raw. I watched you pour yourself into Emily. I watched you plan her parties, fund her trips, babysit her kids. I watched you tell everyone how proud you were of her, even when she barely called you. I showed up with groceries and got a shrug. Her voice cracked. "She needed me more." "No," I said, leaning forward. "You needed her more. You needed someone to reflect who you wanted to be. And I never played that part well enough." She looked away. The tension stretched between us like an old rope, frayed and trembling. I stood, walked to the sink, Let the water run. You don't need a key to this house, I said. You need to earn trust, and that doesn't happen through lemon cookies. She opened the tin anyway. Inside, tucked under wax paper, was the silver locket. It had been polished. The clasp reattached. She slid it across the table without a word. I found it in the drawer, she said. Figured you'd want it back. I didn't touch it, not yet. What do you want from me? I asked quietly. She exhaled, long and brittle. I want you to believe that I'm trying, even if it's late, even if I never got it right. The truth is, part of me wanted to believe her. The part that had waited decades for her to look me in the eye and see me, not as a backup, not as a default, but as her child. But belief wasn't enough anymore, and neither was timing. I walked her to the door. She turned before stepping out. Do I get a yes? No, I said, softly but firmly, but you get the chance to show up without one. She nodded once. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't say anything back. She left. That night, I sat at the kitchen table long after the light had gone flat and blue. I opened the tin again, took out the locket, opened it. Inside, the folded grocery list. Milk, rice, Rachel's lasagna. I closed the locket, placed it on the table, and rested my hand over it. Maybe she had remembered me, in pieces. In quiet ways I couldn't see back then, but now, I remembered myself. And I wasn't giving that key to anyone, not even her. Winter came in slowly that year. No early snow, just the quiet encroachment of cold mornings and the soft scrape of frost on windows. By then, Mom's 3 months were nearly up. She hadn't asked for the key again, not once, and I hadn't softened. But she showed up more often, sometimes with groceries, sometimes just to sit on the porch and watch the lake. She didn't always knock. Some days she waited in her car until I opened the door. Other days she left without saying a word. There was something in that restraint I hadn't seen in her before. Not pride, not guilt. Something quieter. A learning curve. And part of me, some corner that hadn't hardened all the way, took notice. The last day of her stay came without drama. She arrived with a single suitcase and the look of someone who had already decided not to argue. She stepped inside, sat on the edge of the couch like she used to at doctor's offices, upright and polite. I'm leaving tomorrow, she said, folding her hands. I booked a small apartment closer to the church. I nodded. That's good. I wanted to say thank you for letting me stay, even with everything. She glanced around the room. It felt like a home, she added. Not mine, but a home. I didn't say anything. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. It was thick, labeled with her shaky handwriting. This is for you. What is it? My will and power of attorney papers. I don't have much, but what I do, it's yours, not Emily's. She's doing fine. And she stopped returning my calls 2 months ago. I didn't touch the folder, but I listened. Rachel, I know this doesn't undo anything, but I want to do something right while I still can. I sat down across from her. It's not about the money, I said. I know. It never was. I know, she said again, her voice almost a whisper. She looked tired, not just physically. Something else. Like all the years of holding things in had finally started to leak through the cracks. You used to call me practical, I said slowly, efficient, the one who didn't need things. You always seemed so strong, she said. I was surviving. She lowered her eyes. I confused silence with strength, and I didn't realize what I was asking you to carry. We sat there still for a long time, just 2 women in the middle of all the time they'd wasted. And then, finally, I stood and walked to the kitchen. There was a small drawer near the fridge. I opened it, took out a key, plain silver, no fancy chain, just a tag with the word back etched into the side. I walked back, held it out. I'm not giving you a key to this house, I said. Not like you want, not for comfort or convenience. She looked at it, confused, almost disappointed. This isn't for coming in unannounced, I continued. It's for emergencies. And only because you've shown me you can knock first. She took it gently, like it might shatter in her palm. I understand, she said, and for once I believed her. She left the next morning. No dramatic goodbye, just a wave through the frosted windshield and a quiet, "Take care, sweetie," as the car pulled away. I walked through the house afterward, touching the things I had chosen. The lamp, the shelf, the worn corner of the rug where the sun always landed just right. Everything was still mine. But now it didn't feel like I was guarding it. It felt like I had earned it. A week later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address, but I recognized her writing immediately. Inside was a photo, one I had never seen. I was 8, holding a crooked paper model of a house, smiling. My mom was beside me, kneeling, a hand on my back, not posing, just caught in a moment. Real. Behind the photo, a sticky note. I should have framed this. You were always building something. I just wasn't smart enough to see it. I read that note 5 times. Then I took it to my studio and pinned it above my drafting board. Right next to the post-it she'd left me in that envelope years ago, just until you get your own place. Together, they told a story. Not of forgiveness, but of change. Of a daughter who stayed strong, not because she was born to, but because she had to. Of a woman who thought she had lost everything, but finally learned how to give something back. Of a home that was once filled with erasure, and now stood on reclaimed ground. And of a key. Not to the front door, but to the truth. Some nights, I sit by the window with a cup of tea, the same kind she used to steep. Jasmine, light, barely sweet. I hold the locket in one hand, the key in the other. Both small, both heavy. I don't think forgiveness comes all at once. I think it comes in pieces. A look, a gesture, a folder full of names and signatures, a shared cup of tea on a gray Sunday. The house is still mine, but now when I walk through the halls, I don't carry the same weight. She visits sometimes, still knocks, still waits until I open the door. Sometimes we speak, sometimes we just sit. There's no dramatic music, no sudden declarations, just space and time, and the occasional silence that doesn't hurt anymore. And I've come to learn that sometimes that's enough to breathe, enough to rebuild, enough to call it peace.